this has been a tough one, but we knew we had to move past. We said that yesterday. As you guys probably have heard, that Tanner broke his hand in the game, had surgery on Sunday morning, and we don't know the exact, timetable on him as well. So that'll probably just be left pretty much open for a little while. Like I said, we don't know a ton more about that. But it's this is one of those things, man. You get in this league and you're going to have to move forward. And tough game on Saturday, and come in on Sunday, spend a lot of time, looking at it, evaluating a bunch of things, get our guys in here, give them an opportunity to put it to rest, to find, to learn, and to move forward. And I think that's where if I could say anything, the resiliency right now, the attitudes of our guys, I couldn't be more impressed with. I know it's hard to say, but I did tell them that I thought last week was a really, really, really good week of preparation. They did a great job respecting the rivalry and all the things that they did, practicing with intensity. Didn't end up working, but that's a part of the game as well. And so there's only one way to get the taste out of your mouth. That was to go back out there yesterday, and today makes it a little bit harder because you don't get to go out and practice and kind of finish up the taste in your mouth, but we'll get rolling with that again tomorrow.
Luke, I think you were asked after the game about the potential of tweaking some things offensively to fit more of what Braden can do versus Tanner. What do you, when you look at those two, what do you see the differences are, and what do you think some of the things you can maybe accentuate with Braden?
I don't know that there's a ton of differences. I mean, I think the biggest difference is just the experience. And that was the beautiful thing about Tanner Mordecai is, his ability to come in here, not just with his experience of playing, but his experience of being through so many ups and downs, from his original stop in, at Oklahoma to SMU. And those things are invaluable. And Braden just doesn't have those experiences, and so that makes it more difficult in some ways for him. But I'll be honest with you, he's got a great head on his shoulders. I mean, there's nobody that's in this building more than him. Maybe Tanner be the only other one that pushes the envelope to, you got to kick him out of here. But we feel really good about his ability to execute, do a lot of the things that we have done. But everybody has their strengths, and we'll have to play a little bit more in some of those ways towards what we feel like he can do best.
Luke, obviously you're talking about Braden there, but do you envision maybe packages for guys like Miles or Nick down the road, or how do you kind of see that position?
We'll see. I mean, we don't really know. I mean, I know Miles is listed as the backup, and I know we talked about this yesterday, and it'll be, we'll see who this week really kind of picks up the slack a little bit and gets their opportunities to go in there with the second group, whether that's against the defense or that's in some of the scout work stuff, and to see who kind of takes the bit there. But as you get into those guys, there are some differences, obviously, with what it is that they can do and what they're most comfortable doing, none of which have much experience of playing, but all have different talents. So you feel like when you're consistent about at least what you've put in from the time spring ball forward, all guys have to have a grasp of the things that we're doing, but each of them, obviously being young, have a uniqueness to a lot of the things that they can do, I think, especially now.
Luke, you mentioned you feel pretty good about Braden and the strengths that he brings. Just, we haven't had a chance to see him in a few months. What has stood out to you in his time in the program and the things you think he can do well?
Well, I probably said it from the get-go, right? I mean, there's nobody that's here more, that spends more time in here in the office and breaking and watching film and learning and studying. To be honest with you, from the time he walked in the door, through the weight room and stuff like that, he's changed in a lot of ways. That's not probably when he walked in the door his strong suit. Sometimes you get in places where quarterbacks are handled a lot different, just in their lifting and in their their development outside of just in the classroom and on the football field, and I thought he's done a great job with that as well. Like I said, the unique thing is guys rallying around him, guys understanding who he is, guys having confidence and belief in him, and we got a small glimpse of what he has been able to do just this past week in a very tough situation. But I think this will be a different thing for him walking in the door, knowing what he's got to be able to do.
Luke, you talked about open competition for the backup spot. Do you envision one or the other being similar to Braden Locke's skill set wise as a factor in the backup competition?
No, I don't know that is. I mean, because I think all those guys are uniquely a bit different, meaning that they're really young. not that Braden's really old, but I think just in where they are in the grasp of the overall scheme of things. And I mean that because you can study it, you can work it, you can learn it, but when you don't get the opportunity to even go out there and practice every week, whether you're running with the twos or even in fall camp when you're competing more so with the ones and the twos, it's hard to say that you're developing as much as you need to at that position. And that's what's, to me, always the most difficult thing about that third quarterback is how much opportunities does he get? How many reps does he get? Even, in there, during a game week, if they're not down with the scout running and doing some things, they're really just getting mental reps down there with the offense. So that's why it's kind of a competition to see now when put in there who can do the little things really well. Not just what their skill set is, but who can take care of the football, who understands what it is that what needs to be done.
That's kind of a follow-up on that. Normally, if you have a clear 1 and 2 quarterbacks, the reps in practice are pretty static. But with so many inexperienced guys, what factors do you weigh in how you divvy up those reps?
Well, it'll be who can take care of the football, and we do enough with ones on ones and twos on twos, just to make sure we're continuing to play the speed of the game. That you'll see some of those things, and even during a normal week, we go threes a little bit and just some situational stuff, and those guys are always kind of rolling through there, and you get to see who understands some things, but also who can take care of the football, who can not put yourself in a really difficult and a worse situation than you already are in. And I think that's where, when making a decision, it's going to come down to who's going to give us the best opportunity to manage what it is that we need to do.
You can kind of challenge the offensive line after the game, kind of said that they need to step up with the quarterback situation. Obviously, a tough defensive line here in Illinois this week. What do you think the offensive line needs to do in terms of elevating their play from what you've seen the first 6 weeks?
When I say that because there are guys that can handle it. I think that when you start talking about protection and the ability to dominating and controlling the line of scrimmage, that gives you a lot more confidence in everything that you're doing. And where I thought the offensive line played a good game, we need him to play even better. And I think as you get these situations, just like we're going to say about Braylon's going to have to put some more on his shoulders as well. Anytime you got some new guys in there, there's other things you got to throw upon other people. And I wouldn't say that if I didn't think they could handle it, right? If we had a younger offensive line, I wouldn't be saying we're going to put a little bit more on our offensive linemen to do the things they need to do. And if we didn't have an established tailback that, can handle it, then I probably wouldn't be saying that about him as well. And so I think those are the things where you're just saying, okay, now who do we turn towards? Who's going to be the kind of the spark? Let's be honest. Tanner Mordecai was a leader and will still continue to be a leader. And not that Braylon can't, because anytime whoever's a quarterback has to be a leader. But I think this is an opportunity that we have to have some other guys that kind of got to step out of maybe their comfort zones and take a little bit more of a leadership role.
Luke, you said after the Buffalo game that if you're the same in week 1 as you are in week 8, it's going to be very difficult to have a successful season. You're not at week 8 yet, but I'm just wondering where you think you guys are better now than you were back in week 1.
Well, I mean, I think we understand each other better. I think we understand, what our guys are being able to do a little bit better, both offensively and defensively. Sometimes you kind of assume things that are going to happen when all of a sudden the bullets start flying, and then maybe they do or they don't, or somebody exceeds your expectations. So, with injuries and all those things coming about, if you don't have a structure to what it is that you want to do, it's really difficult. That's kind of that consistency behind it. So as a new guy comes in like Braden, you want to be able to still have the structure to what you do, but you got to tailor things and make sure you're putting guys, especially young guys, in situations where they can handle it. And so does that cause you to evolve a little bit different? It can, but all in all, we got to continue to grow. And I think that's where you have a loss, and the initial thing to look at is, oh man, you took a step backwards. Well, there's some things we didn't take a step backwards in. But there's a lot of things that we know we got to continue to push forward with as well. And in a game like that last week, they just get highlighted a lot more.
You had mentioned after the Iowa game, when you were talking about the offense, you're still trying to kind of use how the players fit into the system. Do you feel like it's been perhaps more of a challenge than anticipated in this overhaul to get them playing at the level that you guys believe is possible?
No, I think there's just some new things, right? I mean, like by nature, what they see every day, and what they saw in fall camp and what they saw in spring ball was a little bit different. Meaning, like, let's say blocking on the perimeter. We didn't do a great job this past week of blocking on the perimeter. The way they played their zone match concept and some of the things, the nickel took a lot of things away from us. And they did a great job with the vision and not being able to, maybe handle that thing on the perimeter. Not something that, our guys probably saw a ton against our defense, playing a little bit more man, playing a little bit more on-body stuff. Sometimes it's a little bit easier to block out there on the perimeter just by the nature of a guy's playing man-to-man on another guy. So that's where you're just, guys are thrown into these other situations. Do they recognize, whether it's a Tucker Ashcraft who's a freshman or Hayden Rucci who, probably hasn't played other than start of spring ball, out there in space a lot. Do they recognize some of those things and be able to execute on game day when things are a little bit different? That's where we're having to continue to, try to tailor what it is that we need to do based on what, our guys have the best opportunity to do too. And that's what we kind of mean by the evolution and as you evolve through the season.
I'm curious, everybody wants to look ahead to what Braden has to offer, and rightfully so, but what have your conversations with Tanner been like since Saturday? Can you kind of convey what his emotion was like after the game?
Very tough. I mean, there's nobody that's more of a competitor than him. And just like for the sheer reason he didn't come out after the play happened, right? He breaks his hand. He stays in there. It feels like he's just got a little, just kind of working it out with his hand and goes on to the next play. And we call a play. And unfortunately, it's 2nd and 2. And as he goes to kind of rip the ball, he recognizes he cannot grip the football. And so he obviously tries to get us out of a bad situation. And takes a 1-yard loss or something like that to put us in 3rd and 3. But most others would have probably, felt the pain and, curious about what it was. And there's a guy that his competitive spirit and his emotions probably kept him from feeling what was natural. Hindsight, he wish he would have recognized it a little bit better and maybe didn't take the 2nd down play. I don't know what he would have done. Maybe just dropped down and they wouldn't have said they were trying to delay the game because they don't usually blame offenses for that. But I think that's just kind of shows his mentality to how he plays the game.
Luke, you talked about leaders stepping up, and last 3 games seems like Muma's role maybe is more of a true number 2 than number 1 inside linebacker. In your experience, do you think it's tougher for guys to be a leader when they're not on the field as much?
It is. There's no doubt. I mean, us as coaches tell them, well, you don't change, be the same person you are, still take the same role. And the nature of it is it's really difficult, right? It's like when a guy gets injured, what we're going to ask Tanner to do and the leadership we're going to ask of him, and whether it's Tanner or Ches, you guys got to keep your role. Guys still look to you. Boy, is that difficult. And, but we're going to have that expectation for them to do that and make sure they understand that their teammates are counting on them for that role that they need to provide. And but there's no doubt it is definitely harder.
Luke, with Tanner's hand, is it more of a finger situation, a palm? I mean, structurally, what?
I'm not a doc. It was a hand. I don't know exactly whether it's the 5th metatarsal or something. I'm not positive. I know they put a pin in it, and there's not a real established timetable to how fast he can handle the things he would need to handle. But it is in his throwing hand.
Luke, talking about some of the short distance situations, it seems like there have been some inconsistencies to begin the season. You guys ran from under center on a 4th down play. What have been some of the issues early on, and do you envision running some more under center in those situations going forward?
Well, I mean, that kind of each week, I mean, we were under center obviously last week on the 4th and short, and sometimes that makes it a little bit more difficult for the quarterback to have any recognition or any idea of a free guy coming off the backside edge, and also doesn't provide that guy off the backside edge to have to at least honor the quarterback in some of those situations. So that's a part of it. But normally when we get to bigger people, we have the ability to get up under center. We did the same thing and ended up jumping off sides. So those are things where we cannot make those mistakes. Those are probably the things that are really costing us, going from 3rd and 1 and 3rd and 2 to 3rd and 7. That would probably be one of the bigger emphases that we made on Sunday with our guys, the honesty things of how we're putting ourselves in a really tough situation with some of those and some of the penalties on special teams.
Luke, you talked about the long touchdown run Iowa had. We
I
talked
did.
about it after the game.
Yeah.
The players said we didn't fit it up properly. And I'm just curious, when you looked at tape, what did you see that broke down? But even if something broke down initially, were you guys in position to bring that guy down before he gets out all the way to the end zone?
Yes. I don't know if you saw it or if you've re-seen it as many times as I have, but there's two guys there. They actually kind of overlap each other and stack on each other and probably put the corner. I'm not sure if it was Rico or yeah, so it was Alex maybe or whoever. Kind of the two guys got in each other's way with him and Hunter, and we actually had a chance to have him in the backfield too. But then ultimately, I think that we ended up missing a tackle from the middle of field safety, and then obviously Rico ended up chasing or not able to catch up with him. But there's a few of them right there in that situation. You go from a possibility of a 0-yard gain to a 8-yard gain to an 82-yard gain, and that's the one that is probably, obviously, as you look back at the biggest and really the only, right? We had one 43-yard, 42-yard play on offense. They had one 82-yard play. When we break down things offensively and defensively, we're all looking for big plays, and we call it anything a plus 20. We don't even get into the runs or passes anymore. Anything as a plus 20 is a big play. Give up one on defense, and we had one on offense, and which is rare in a lot of games today.
Luke, you ended up passing, I think, 50 times against Iowa. I know 8 of those came, last drive when you're down 2 possessions. But in general, and this may depend on the matchup, I assume, do you have an ideal in terms of the balance you want, particularly knowing you've got a quarterback who doesn't have as much experience as Tanner does?
No, I mean, balance is you love to come out of the game with the yardage balanced up, right? I mean, if you're all one way, then it becomes really difficult to be good at it, right? I never want to be the team that leads the country in rushing, right? That's usually a military academy that's run the triple option. But then, you don't want to lead the country in passing either because then you're a team that probably doesn't ever run the football. So it's hard to say exactly where you are, but like we said, if you could have balance being 250 and 250 ultimately would be the greatest thing, whatever it takes to get to that point. But that's where we got to continue to figure out what's truly going to be our strengths. And if it means more of, 60-40 on running the football, then it means more 60-40 running the football. But I don't think that you can just for sure say what that exactly is. It's kind of like in the personnel department as well. You got to find a way to get your best 11 guys in the field. And if guys get hurt, then who's the next one that makes you the best 11 out there?
Luke, you talked about the offensive line and running back Braylon Allen obviously having a bigger emphasis with Braden in there. What's your message to the receiver room specifically with their ability to separate with Braden coming in?
Well, I don't spend a whole lot of time in the receiver room. They don't they don't kind of jive with me nearly as much with just the nature of the defensive lineman in me. But I've always told them, I said, your number one job is to make the quarterback look good. And what does that mean? That means whatever it means, right? I mean, if the ball's a little high, catch it. If the ball's a little low, catch it. If that means that, you got to beat the one-on-one to give the opportunity for the quarterback. He's got a lot on his plate. And so we got to continue to find ways to make the quarterback look good. And, we had some of those situations where we could have made him look a lot better, whether we catch the ball and stay on our feet, we run for some yards after catch, some of the third down. I mean, there's all different ways. And it's not saying that they didn't do a great job. It's just there's some difficult balls to be caught, especially as tight a coverage as those guys are playing and did play this past week. It's not going to be any different, So they've got to find ways to make their quarterback look good. And, there's many different ways of doing that.
I'm going to acknowledge that I'm asking this question after what was a pretty tough loss, but expectations coming into the year were pretty big from the outside. You had nothing to do with that. It's not your thing. But did we all underestimate maybe what the challenge you guys were walking into and your staff were walking into this year?
I don't know. I mean, again, there's nobody that puts more pressure and has a higher expectation than myself and the guys in the locker room, right? And I think that's where, you love them if everybody, you feel good going in the season because people think that. But the reality is that it happens every year. It's somebody, it's somewhere, it's something. Who knows whether it's realistic or not? Right now we're still in a position like, guys, quit worrying about the destination. That's what I try to tell them. Let's focus on the process to what we do. We get so caught up in the destination that you don't even have a chance to enjoy some of the things and the struggles that you have to go through, and which is not easy. Don't get me wrong. I'm as bad as anybody, But the reality is that there's going to be a struggle, right? I mean, you can look at some of the best years here, and I don't even want to go back into, but a Rose Bowl year where I think you ended the season at 6-6. And it's just, is it perception? Is it what? Who knows? You play your best ball at the end of the year, and you have an opportunity to not just have a successful season, but you see the growth and the things that you're doing, and whatever that ends up ultimately meaning at the end of the year, based on what your record, then you can feel good about continuing to move forward.